Over the years, people have come up with all kinds of different challenge runs for Final Fantasy X with a number of funny and sometimes ridiculously confusing abbreviations. What the majority of those challenges have in common though, is that they rely heavily on specific steals or equipment drops from random encounters and/or bosses in order to advance the game. So what would happen if we removed the random encounter portion from the game entirely? How would the challenge look if we just went in a straight line from point A to B while skipping every battle or quest that is not absolutely mandatory? Today we're going to find out. As for the rules of the run, the major point is that we obviously completely skip all random encounters and don't interact with them at all. To make sure we don't accidentally run into anything we don't have to, we toggle the no encounters option that was added in the PC release of the game to make sure we only have to do what is mandatory. We are also not allowed to do any optional side quests that the game offers. This means no such things as the Belgian battles, celestial weapons, monster arena, blitzball, or even optional areas like the Cavern of the Stolen Faith or the Omega Ruins. And because this wouldn't be hard enough yet, we also ban summons, overdrives, as well as customization, though the last part is probably not that important, seeing as we wouldn't be able to customize a lot of stuff anyways, considering we will barely get any of the ingredients for most equipment. Last but not least, we also add another minor rule that we are not allowed to reload boss fights in order to get favorable item and/or equipment drops. We go through the battle one time only and have to go with whatever the drop is, no matter if we get lucky or not. So if you want to put this into classic FF10 abbreviation, this would probably be a MBONSQNSNONCNR run. Doesn't this roll off your tongue just absolutely perfect? I love the sound of this. As always, I'm writing this as I go through the run, so while I do have a couple of ideas on how to approach this challenge, things will probably derail eventually, so I hope you're looking forward to that. That being said, I think it's time we get going now. We start the game, select the standard sphere grid, and get to name the protagonist. And because I am a fan of cheap plugs, we just name him Subscribe, though we run into the character limit here, so it's only Subscribe. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, now would be a good time to do so, because I do tons of challenge runs like this, so you should keep an eye out for more videos. Now there isn't really much to talk about with the opening scenes since the intro is rather scripted. We fail Oren's overdrive on purpose because we're not allowed to use them, and then continue on until Sin drags us into Spira. We end up in Bodge, collect all items on the way, and then are about to head into the first boss fight with Click. Considering this is still pretty much the same as in a casual playthrough, the battle is nothing worth mentioning. We try to get a couple of grenades for Riku to quicken things up, and once the enemy is down, the Elbad drag us to their ship where we get the introduction to the sphere grid, and this is something I want to go into more detail on. At first glance, this run seems to be easier than a lot of challenge runs just by the fact that we don't ban the sphere grid entirely. What is a very important thing to consider though is that due to us only fighting absolutely mandatory battles, we will have a severe lack of spheres when it comes to advancing our characters to the sphere grid. So while we do get AP and are allowed to get our stats up, we have to be very careful and selective on which nodes to activate and what characters to go for, as we will have nowhere near enough spheres to get everybody on the grid up. That being said, we learn Cheer with Titus and then are off into the next area. The first fight is a forced one against the 7-3 Piranhas. Since we're still in the early game, there barely is any difference compared to a casual playthrough, so we steal a grenade to overkill them, which doesn't even matter because they don't have any drops anyways, and then head into the next boss fight against Tross. Riku again goes for a couple of steals, while Titus uses Cheer to get everybody's attack and defense up a bit higher before going in for damage, and yeah, that is pretty much all there is to it. Just attack and throw grenades until the boss is down, and continue on until we get attacked by Sin and end up on Besaid. Again we grab all the items on the way, and then go through the first cloister of trials. Now you can argue whether the Destruction Sphere chest should be allowed or not since it's technically optional, but I just see it as an extra chest in a mandatory dungeon like every other chest that you can pick up on the way, so I think we can allow those. On the way to the ship, we have our first and biggest set of mandatory regular encounters that are mostly used to explain the game's mechanics. Now while we got those running in the background, I want to talk about my strategy for this challenge. As mentioned before, we will severely lack spheres for the majority of the game, so we have to be very careful about which characters to advance. The current plan is to go with a physical party consisting of Titus, Kimahri and Auron, who will all advance through Auron's sphere grid portion. Auron has a lot of HP and attack +4 nodes on his grid, which is probably the most efficient way to spend our limited amount of spheres. We will also fully ignore both Waka and Lulu since we just don't have the means to get them up, though we will still try to get AP on Lulu to advance her grid for a specific spell we want to grab later on. Power spheres are the most common ones in the game, and Auron also has the extract power ability on his grid, meaning that we can force power sphere drops from bosses who have useless item drops. With all that theory out of the way now, let's focus back on the game. We get super lucky and manage to get a Dark Touch weapon for Titus from the Force Garuda fight. This one could come in really handy for later boss fights against the Chocobo Eater especially, as I don't think we have any means to buy such a weapon up to that point. We make the first few movements on the sphere grid by getting the first few null elemental skills onto Yuna and advance everybody else as well. Like mentioned before, we are mostly looking for HP and attack +4 nodes, with Yuna also picking up a few MP nodes on the way to get her max MP up a little. After grabbing all the items on the ship, we head into the next boss battle against Sin. There is an exploit here where you can theoretically farm infinite AP by battling the Sin skills over and over again, since they will always respawn once you have beaten all of them, but obviously this is against the spirit of the challenge, so we're not going to do that. We kill off the first two and then leave the last one alive to prevent the respawn before focusing on Sin itself with our 3 ranged characters. Once that is done, we immediately head into the next battle against another Sin spawn. Similar to the battle before, the scales would respawn here, so I think for situations like this, the fairest way to approach such things is being allowed to beat them once, but not several times in cases where enemies respawn. So while we set up our buffs with cheer, Waka will try to beat a few of the scales, though no more than 4 in total. Once we're finished, we focus on the boss, and thanks to blind the battle is rather safe, and it's not long until we're already done again. After Sin obliterates Killiga, we head into the woods next, where we get another forced tutorial battle with Kimahri's Lancet and Overdrives that we're not allowed to use anyways, and since Lord Oku is entirely optional, we skip it and head straight for the temple where we battle the next Sin spawn. This is still very similar to a regular playthrough. We focus on the tentacles first, and after they're gone, we get our damage onto the boss. The poison can be a bit annoying, but it's not really anything bad, and we continue on with Lulu and Kimahri until the boss is down. Nothing special to mention here. The boss can theoretically drop weapons with Dark Touch, but since we already got one on Titus, it's not the end of the run if we don't get any. Ideally, I would like to get Dark Touch for Kimahri here, but unfortunately, I forgot that the character with the final blow has the highest chance to get the equipment drop, and since Lulu managed to get the last shot in, of course, we also get the Dark Touch weapon for her. Since we're not allowed to reload to try again, we just continue on like normal, though I don't think this is going to be a problem going forward since we already have Dark Touch on Titus like just mentioned. We continue on the sphere grid by getting the last null elemental skills on Yuna, as well as another 200 HP on Kimahri who slowly moves into Titus grid portion. In the Cloister of Trials, we once again make sure to grab the extra chest, and then we're on the way to Luca. Here we could theoretically buy the Stunning Steel with Slow Touch for Titus, but eventually I decided against it as I don't think it's absolutely necessary and we want to save Gil for later on where we're going to need it. After grabbing all the chests, Kimahri picks a fight with the Ronso and Yuna gets kidnapped, so let's get her back. The Machina on the way are pretty simple, as they can all be one-shot with a Thunder from Lulu. Unfortunately, those don't drop any spheres, but we also take the potion drops since they might come in handy during parts where we don't have access to Yuna later on. Once we made it to the ship, we have to fight the Obliterator now. As in every playthrough, we use the crane to our advantage and then just finish the boss off with a couple of Thunders from Lulu. In an ideal scenario, we could get a Lightning Steel drop for Titus here, which would be a huge help for a few upcoming battles, but it's not mandatory and the chances are also relatively low. And yeah, we get a Metal Arm Guard. Not like I was expecting anything different, to be honest. Up next is the Blitzball finals against the Luca Gores. Like mentioned in the rules, Blitzball itself is banned, but this one game is mandatory, so if we already have to do it, might as well try to win, right? The attack sphere that we get as a reward is quite useful in a setup like this. After having a 2-goal lead, we just chill in our goal area and wait for the timer to run down until the match is won. Briefly after, Fiends attack the arena and we have to get through a couple of Sahagins. And this segment is one of the main reasons why I decided to go for a physical setup in this challenge. Each of the Sahagins drop a power sphere, 2 if you manage to get an overkill. This was also the reason why I was hoping for a lightning steel drop from a Blizzarator, since the lightning strike would have guaranteed an overkill with Titus. After maxing our attack with cheer, Titus is still not able to get an overkill with a regular attack, but luckily both of them crit somewhat often. I don't know what the maximum amount of spheres you can get here is, but if we get somewhere around 20, we should be good for the most part, I think. Luckily both of them get quite a few crits in, and we managed to get a total of 21 power spheres before going to the next battle against another Garuda, which is easy once the enemy is blinded and we have a couple of cheers set up. I am still getting mild PTSD here, remembering my special abilities only challenge, but luckily this time the battle is a lot easier, and we are already done soon after. Orange joins the party, and we continue on me and High Road once everybody is done laughing. Titus finally gets access to haste, as well as a plus 20 max MP to actually be able to cast a few of those. We also use the magic sphere we got on Yuna to make the mandatory Aeon battle later on a little easier. Once again, we grab all the items on the way and then head to the agency where we have to battle the Chocobo Eater afterwards. This is another one of the boss fights where you can argue whether we should beat it or not, since it's technically optional. Just like the Blitzball game though, I think if something is mandatory anyways, we should be allowed to win even if the outcome itself is completely optional. But first of all, we need to see if we're even able to. We try to cast haste on everybody important and make sure to power break the boss afterwards. After blinding it, we cheer a couple of times to increase everybody's attack and defense, and then start pushing back on the boss. Waka will use Dark Attack as long as his MP let him. Afterwards, we will use Titus' Dark Touch weapon we got in Besaid earlier to hopefully get a blind proc onto the boss. As for damage, our main DPS here are Oren and Lulu, with Titus and Kimari as third party member depending on whether the enemy is blinded or not. We don't seem to have too much luck with the blinds though, which still is the big issue since the boss drops on his back relatively quickly, at which point he will only attack with counter magic once he gets lower on HP. In fact, we win the battle without ever getting a single blind proc from Titus. And after thinking about how incredibly unlucky this must have been, I realized that it was actually 100% guaranteed because I was fighting with the Brotherhood the entire time and completely forgot to switch weapons in the first place, so yay, good job me. We still managed to beat the boss though, so I guess it doesn't really matter for the most part, and we can continue on. Mushroom Rock Road doesn't have a single mandatory battle on the way, so with that we continue on to the first real boss fight of most FF10 challenge runs, as we battle Sinspawn Gui next. First of all, we get haste on the most important party members and power break the main body. Once that is done, we start focusing on the heads. Every now and then we bring in Yuna to heal people up, and then continue on attacking the head. The body's damage with power break applied is not really that dangerous, so we usually have no bigger issues and can heal up rather well in between attacks. Party members, Lulu especially, might still go down occasionally from the combination of Demi and Thunder, or if they get targeted by the body, but we can easily bring them back with Phoenix Downs and continue on. Once the head is down, we bring Titus, Kimari and Oren back in and now start focusing on the body. For that, we obviously need to get the arms down first. I'm not sure if the arms give extra AP every time they're killed off, but we need to wipe them anyways in order to deal full damage to the body. Titus also starts cheering a couple of times to get our attack and defense up, and then it's all out on the boss. The arms can be one-shot if we manage to get a critical hit, so they are usually down rather quickly. Just like before, we bring in Yuna every once in a while to heal the party up, but otherwise we just continue on like this. Due to the boss's high HP, the battle takes quite a while, but we have no issues and are eventually able to take GUI down. Same thing goes for GUI number 2, though this time Simo does all the work, so I don't really think we need to talk about this fight specifically, and with that we can continue on. We advance further on the sphere grid by getting Provoke on Titus, and then also break into his grid with Kimahri to learn Cheer. Kimahri will also get haste later on, before we will use a level 2 key sphere to break into Auron's grid. Speaking of Auron, we would like to get extract power on him, but unfortunately we are all out of ability spheres. This is exactly what I was talking about earlier when I said that we will severely lack spheres throughout the entire run, and it's already coming back to bite us. Luckily there is a chest with 4 ability spheres in the upcoming temple, so this is not a big issue just yet. Same thing also happens to Yuna with her life ability, though I think that we will just completely skip that one, considering that we can always use Phoenix Downs as replacement, and the ability spheres are rather rare, so we might want to save them if we got any spare ones left. On the way we grab all the items and then head to the Temple of Jose. With the 4 ability spheres that come at the perfect time, we can also get access to extract power now. Like mentioned earlier, this will be used against bosses which don't have a useful item drop to get a couple of additional power spheres into our inventory. We meet Isaru and then head into the Cloister of Trials, where we once again get the extra treasure before continuing on towards the Moonflow. Since we have to skip Belgemine, the next mandatory battle doesn't happen until we cross the Moonflow and battle the Extractor. Before doing that though, we quickly head to the Merchant and grab a Dark Touch weapon for Auron. We couldn't get one for Kimahri earlier, and I feel like having 2 characters with potential dark procs could be very useful against Wendigo later on. As preparation for the Extractor, we equip the Blue Shield on Titus for Water Ward to reduce the incoming damage. This would also be the second use of the Lightning Steel that we unfortunately couldn't get from Obliterator earlier. While it is not required in our setup, it definitely would have made things easier, but at least we have a Lightning Strike weapon on Waka. We start the battle by once again casting haste on everybody, and then set up a couple of cheers to increase our attack and defense. And yeah, that is pretty much all. After setting up, we just constantly attack the boss until it's down, and we can continue on again. Riko joins the party, and we get the tutorial about her mixes that we're not allowed to use anyways. Guado's Alum doesn't have anything useful to offer either, so once we got all the items, we continue on to the Thunder Plains. Since lightning dodging is an optional side quest, we are not allowed to do that one either, not that I would have wanted if I had the chance, though the 3 HP and strength spheres would have been pretty useful to have. Because of this, we head into the Macalania Woods, where we finally are about to battle another boss again with the battle against Spheromorph. The intended way to battle the boss is by finding out its weakness and then attack with the according elemental spell. Since I really don't feel like guessing around permanently though, we just stick with the default option, which in this case is water, and attack with regular physical attacks. To make sure we're not taking too much damage from counterattacks, Yuna will apply Null Tide constantly, and after setting up haste and cheer, we are ready to throw out the damage, though it's still relatively low. Luckily the boss's counterattacks can be nulled, and its regular physical attacks don't do a lot of damage with power breakups, so there really is nothing dangerous about this battle, and after almost 15 minutes of wailing at the boss, we are done with the battle and can continue on. As a reward, we get a level 2 key sphere, which comes at the perfect time since it means we can now break into Auron's grid with both Titus and Kimahri. Kimahri gets access to haste, Yuna gets some more HP and magic, and we use the strength sphere as well as the HP sphere on the way to Auron's grid. We also head back a little on Auron's grid to not only gain more HP and attack, but also to learn armor break with Titus. We are breaking into pretty much the midpoint of Auron's sphere grid portion, so going back a bit to get the HP and attack plus 4 nodes is certainly a good idea, especially considering that Auron pretty much exclusively has attack plus 4 nodes on his grid. Once we're done with all the menuing, we buy a first strike weapon for Titus from Owaka, and then head straight into the next boss fight against the Crawler. The Negator will be completely ignored as we can't really attack it properly anyways, and I feel like the Gatling gun attack can't be mitigated much easier than the magic beam. The strategy for the most part isn't very special though. We once again set up our main party with haste and cheer, and once we're done we start attacking the boss. We equip lightning strike weapons on all characters that have one available, which in our case is only Oren, and then get going. Without Yuna, the only way to heal is with potions, but luckily we have a decent enough stock build up by this point, so we can easily throw high potions whenever needed. And yeah, that is pretty much all there is to that battle. Just continue attacking and heal up whenever necessary, and the boss eventually goes down. We once again advance the most important characters on the sphere grid, and also use our only speed sphere for a +4 agility on Riku. At the moment, we can't really get access to more speed spheres, but some more extra agility is probably going to be very important down the line, so this is definitely something to keep in mind. With that being said, we head into the very first battle against Seymour. Since we have never gotten a weapon with Stone Touch, we need to take down the Guado the casual way, so we steal from Riku to disable their auto potion and start buffing our party with haste. Seymour's attacks can easily be mitigated as he follows a fixed pattern on which attack he does next, so thanks to Yuna's null elemental skills, we can completely negate all of his damage. We also talk to Seymour with Titus to get a nice attack boost, and then start going after the Guados while putting an extract power on every single enemy. For fights like this, it's a tricky decision whether to go for the normal item drop or to use extract power, but we haven't really used any black magic in a while, so the regular black magic sphere drop is probably not of any use. Even more so considering we can also grab a black magic sphere from a chest in Bevel later on, I think this is probably the right way to go. Once all Guados are gone, we throw out an extra couple of cheers, and then push Seymour into phase 2 where he summons Anima. The goal here is pretty simple: beat her before her overdrive bar is full. Luckily with our damage, this should not be a problem, especially since we get lucky and have Anima not target Titus at all. Downed party members can easily be brought back with Phoenix Downs, and a couple of turns later, the enemy is already down and we enter the last phase of the fight. Seymour will now attack twice each turn, but his elemental pattern still stays the same, so as long as we have our null elemental skills up, there isn't anything that can happen. It's only a couple of attacks until Seymour is down, and the battle is won. We advance further on the sphere grid, and after escaping the temple without getting into a single unrunnable Guado encounter, we head into the next boss fight against Wendigo. Just like before, we start by stealing from the Guado to disable their auto potion and then quickly get power break onto Wendigo. As long as one of the Guados is still up, getting blind on the boss is rather useless since the Guado will just cure it with eye drops, so we try to get rid of them quickly, and once they're gone, we use Wakka's Dark Attack to get the status up. This is the reason why I bought the extra Dark Touch weapon for Oren earlier. Wendigo puts out big damage numbers, especially once it gets berserked when the Guados go down, so we definitely want to have blind on constantly. Once we finish setting up with cheer, it's back to doing damage, and that's all for the rest of the fight. If Wendigo gets a hit in, we bring in Yuna to heal up with Cura, and then go back on damage until the boss is down. After a couple of more cutscenes, we end up in Big Canal Island and try to get our party back together. The forced fight against Sue is not actually mandatory, so once both Oren and Lulu rejoin the party, we just escape the battle. Same thing in the forced encounter against the Machina. You're supposed to learn about Riku's insta-kill steal here, but since we once again got the option to run away, we do just that. The only actual mandatory battle in the desert is against the last Mandragora that blocks access to home, and this one was trickier than I initially expected because of Seed Burst, which has a high chance to confuse a character. The right play here would have been to just throw remedies to heal the status, but since I wanted to save those in case we might need them later, I was trying to get rid of the confusion by attacking the characters inflicted with one of the mages. Unfortunately, that didn't quite work out that well, and we are getting rather close to game overing here. Not only that, but we also need to use a lot of Phoenix Downs, so yeah, this was probably not the smartest idea. The fact that the enemy is also immune to blind certainly doesn't make things any easier either. Eventually we make it through the fight though, and now continue on to the Albad's home, which is getting attacked by the Guado. Unfortunately, we have to skip a lot of items here since they put you into extra encounters that you can run from, so we only grab what's on the way. The fights against the Guado are somewhat tricky as well. The first one with the 3 bombs is still rather easy, as we just disable the auto potion, take care of the Guado, and then take out the bombs. The second one against the 2 dual horns is a bit trickier, since we want to get rid of the Guado quickly, while also putting blind on the dual horns, considering they deal a lot of physical damage. Eventually, we don't get lucky enough with our blind procs here, and game over. On our second attempt, we get a tiny bit luckier with the blind, and because both dual horns were already almost done by this point, I decided to take them down first before going for the Guado. In hindsight, I could have also used Power Break to reduce the amount of incoming damage, but for whatever reason I completely forgot about that during the battle. The last one features 2 Chimera, and this fight is a little easier. Megiddo Flame especially can deal quite some damage, but we're pretty good on HP with our main party, and once we're finished setting up haste, we can go to work. We also make sure to once again use Extract Power on every single enemy to get more Power Spheres, and then continue doing damage. Characters still go down every now and then, but once the Guado is defeated, the fight becomes quite a bit easier with only 2 incoming attacks each turn, and we're able to beat the enemies soon after. On the airship, we had to rinse shop, but we're now finally able to buy distillers. Until now, we only had the option to force Power Spheres, but from now on, we can grab anything that we could potentially need. For now, we only buy speed distillers, as we want to get a couple of speed spheres soon, considering agility is becoming more and more important the further we get into the challenge. We also stack up on potions and phoenix downs, and then head into the next boss battle against F-Ray. We immediately power break the boss, and then throw one of the newly bought speed distillers. With Power Break on, the boss's single target attacks don't deal that much damage, but those are probably the least worrying part about that battle in general. We set up Haste and Cheer, and once the boss goes for Poison Breath, we bring Riku in to throw an Albat potion to not only heal the party, but also get rid of the poison. Unfortunately, we haven't gotten the slow touch weapon earlier, which would have been pretty useful here, but I think we can deal without it just fine. The boss can also use Stone Gaze to petrify a character, which we can easily heal with gold needles. Unfortunately, the petrify also gets rid of all buffs, so we have to reapply haste as well. I am not 100% sure, but I think the cheer buffs for whatever reason stay even through the petrify, so at least we don't have to worry about that. When F-Ray gets low on HP, it casts haste on itself as well, and at this point we want to end the battle quickly since we might get overrun on damage otherwise. Luckily the boss is almost down by this point, so only a few more attacks are needed to get through the battle successfully. We watch the upcoming cutscenes where for some reason something seemed to have gone wrong, as the game suddenly went mute and the text box from the cutscene remained on the screen. I just tried to ignore that, but as soon as we tried to engage into the first battle, the game just froze, so yeah, that's a reset. Luckily, this version of the game has autosave, so we don't need to do the effort battle again, and can continue just like before once we used up all our sphere levels. As far as I know, all enemies in this segment drop ability spheres by default, so we usually wipe the red warrior mark immediately with Titus to not get attacked by his AoE fire attack. With his recent attack boost, there is a decent chance he can one-shot them, so this definitely helps in mitigating the incoming damage. The other monks are pretty harmless, so after using Extract Power, we can easily take them out as well. On the encounters with the robot, we wipe one monk but leave the other one alive, as the robot will permanently remove party members from the battle with his kick if it is the last enemy left standing. Other than that, there isn't much worth mentioning here. Just continue on like this until we get to the end. During this segment, we also get access to Bio with Lulu. Bio is going to become very useful for quite a few bosses later on, so we definitely want that. I'm not sure whether I will use Lulu for Bio, or use the black magic sphere that we're about to get in the Via Purifico to get it onto one of our main party members. Speaking of the Via Purifico, we have to fight Isora now in a mandatory Aeon encounter. This battle is literally the only reason why we put a couple of +4 magic nodes on Yuna in order to make this a little easier. Obviously it can be done with no sphere grid at all as well, but if we are already allowed to use them, why make the battle harder than it needs to be? Once we're done with the Aeon battle, we head to part 2 of Bevel, which is underwater, and we have to refight against Undead F-Ray. Since the boss is undead, we take quick care of it. Throw a speed distiller, 2 Phoenix Downs, and we are already done again. As an equipment drop, we get a Stone Touch weapon for Titus, which at this point isn't really that useful anymore. Ideally, we would have gotten an armor with Stone Ward, but considering that we're not allowed to refight any of the bosses, we just have to take what we can get, so we continue on and reunite the entire party. On the sphere grid, we now get Shell onto Yuna just in time before we head into the next boss fight against Seymour number 2. Again, we start the battle by quickly trying to put up haste. In the first phase, Seymour will always attack random party members with an elemental spell twice. Just like in the first battle, the pattern here is fixed, so we usually just null those again with Yuna's null spells. Unfortunately, Morty Body usually goes right before Seymour and just so happens to use the tier 1 AoE version of the same spell that Seymour uses right afterwards. So if we want to null the boss's attack, we need to get Yuna a turn right between the two in order to cast the null spell. On my first attempt, this didn't work out at all, as Yuna usually goes down before she gets the chance to set the null up, and yeah, as you can see here, we're not really making any progress, and game over before all too long. For the first attack, it seems to be almost impossible to get Yuna a turn between the two enemies, but fortunately on our second attempt, she barely survived the first turn with 3 HP, which means we can now start trying to squeeze her in to put the null elementals up. We also bring Lulu in, who is only here to cast Bio on Seymour and then gets switched out again. Unfortunately, Lulu is not only really squishy, she's also pretty slow, so we're having a hard time giving her a turn to switch her out again without her constantly going down. The good thing is that Seymour takes poison damage every turn, so even if we're struggling to finish our setup, we can still constantly deal passive damage. Eventually, the Desperado from Morty Body caught me off guard though, and we once again game over soon after. Because of this, we go back on Lulu's sphere grid to get a single plus 200 HP node on her. If she's able to survive 2 of Morty Body's attacks, we should have enough leeway to switch her out again. Another option would have been to use the Black Magic Sphere from the Via Purifico and have Kimari learn Bio, but unfortunately he's not available until right after the battle, so this is not an option either. The initial strategy should work as well though, so with Lulu now being slightly more bulky, we head back into the fights. This time we start off a little different as we switch Yuna out for Oren so she's not in danger to get wiped by the very first attack already. We also use this opportunity to have Oren talk to Seymour for a big attack buff, and then bring Lulu in for the poison. Thanks to the extra 200 HP, she can now tank 2 of Morty Body's attacks, so we can safely switch her out again once her next turn comes up. We bring back Titus, let him talk to Seymour for another attack buff, and once everybody is hasted, we start going for damage. It's not long until Seymour switches into phase 2, which might be the most dangerous one in the battle. Seymour will now start to use Break, and if we don't manage to squeeze in a turn before Morty Body's turn comes up, it will use Shattering Claw, which permanently removes the party member inflicted with Petrify from the battle. It was also at this point that I realized that I forgot to put the Stoneproof armor on Yuna. Technically, she's the only one that nulls Break, but for that we would need to actually equip it on her, so after 2 swift breaks by Seymour, the battle is lost yet again shortly after. While fixing my mistake, I went to double check if maybe we have at least a Stone Ward on another character, but unfortunately Yuna is the only one protected here, so once the changes are made, we head back into the battle. Since we already talked about phase 1 more than enough, we head right back into phase 2 where Seymour starts using Break. Just like before, we try to squeeze in a character between Seymour and Morty Body. Thanks to most characters having different agility stats, we switch around and see if there is any way to squeeze somebody in, though this is not always going to be possible. If we cannot get a status heal in time, we just have to hope for some good luck that Morty Body doesn't use Shattering Claw on the petrified character, since the target is not guaranteed. Overall, the strategy works out rather well though. Seymour also targets Yuna occasionally, which is basically a free turn thanks to her Stoneproof armor. Eventually, Morty Body will start healing Seymour with Cura, which means we're now in the last phase where he will exclusively attack with Flare. This is probably the easiest phase of the battle since it's only a single target attack, and we don't have to pay attention to our turn order as much anymore either. If somebody goes down, we can just bring them back with Phoenix down and continue on. Morty body heals for a bit more than 1000 HP, which doesn't even cancel out the poison ticks that do 1400 every turn. Thanks to Yuna also getting Shell right before the battle, our characters are easily able to take a flare, and with that, it's only a couple of more attacks until Seymour is down yet again. This was probably the first trickier fight in terms of actually having to strategize around the boss's AI pattern, but it went pretty well, and we can continue on. We advance on the sphere grid to get Zombie Strike on Titus, cancel the sexy time cutscene because monetization issues, and then continue on to the Calmlands. Since we're not allowed to head to Requiem Temple or the Monster Arena, there really isn't anything we can do, so after picking up the chest here, we continue on straight to the next boss fight against Defender X. After a rather messy fight against Seymour, this battle is free. If you remember early on in the game, we grabbed Provoke, and this boss is one of the reasons why. Once provoked, it will only use Blast Punch, which is a gravity attack that does 50% of the character's current HP as damage, so this means we literally can't lose here. We just set up haste and cheers on everybody, and then start going for damage until the boss is down. Defender X is rather tanky, but there is literally nothing that could get in our way, and we even get lucky as Kimahri hits a critical hit, therefore overkilling the boss. The extra AP and the additional POW sphere certainly can be useful down the line, so I'm not complaining at all. We get Protect on Yuna, advance everybody else, and since we're not allowed to head to the Cavern of the Stolen Faith, we head to Gagaset, where we have our solo Kimahri battle against Biran and Yankee. Thanks to Kimahri being one of our strongest party members, this battle is pretty much a breeze. Both Biran and Yankee drop return spheres, and since we're going to need more agility down the line, the plan is to overkill both of them in order to get a total of 4 return spheres. We start the battle by hasting Kimahri, set up a couple of cheers, and once they split, we throw out an armor break and a single attack is already enough to get the first one down. We do the same thing for Ronso number 2, and the battle is already over again. When I saw the drops though, I was a little off-put for a second though. One of the Ronsos gave us a rare drop, which is 2 friend spheres, and come to think of it, this may be even better than the return spheres. With the friend spheres, we can bring our main attackers over into the late portions of Riku's grid, where there are several +4 agility nodes. The initial plan was to break into Titus' grid portion, where there is a +4 agility node not too far out of the way, and then use a return sphere to get back to the beginning of Oren's grid, where there is another one blocked by a level 2 key pass. But I honestly prefer the method of just warping over to Riku, since those are closer together, so we can save some sphere levels that way. It is not that unlikely to get a rare drop in this battle either. If my math is correct, it should be about 23.5% for at least one of them to drop them, but I was certainly not expecting that. Overall though, I think this is the better outcome than what I initially had planned. As we travel through Mount Gagaset, we run into Wands, and this is the reason why I have been very careful when it comes to spending gil up until now. Wands offers the survivor weapon for Riku for almost 100k. The reason this one is so expensive is because of the alchemy ability. Alchemy doubles the effect of healing items, which basically means that all bad potions now heal for 2000, Mega Potions for 4000, and Phoenix Downs become a full HP revive. With that, Riku will become our go-to healer and is going to pull quite some weight going forward. Because we still have some money left, I also got the Shimmering Blade from Oren, which comes with a nice plus 15% attack in total. Every bit of damage helps, and since we don't really need a lot of gil anymore anyways, I figured it doesn't hurt to also grab this one. While we are already here, we also stock up on items, and then are basically ready to head into the third Seymour fight. And we are going to get through this battle the cheapest way possible, which is via poison. Seymour 3 gets incredibly strong attacks in his later phases, but for some reason, he never transitions into his next phase as long as you don't directly damage him. This means if we just wait for poison to do its job, we only have to deal with everything he has in phase 1. and this one has a relatively simple AI pattern. He will use Lance of Atrophy to put zombie on a character and then insta-wipe them with full life. After doing that twice, he will dispel the party and then use cross cleave before starting all over again. Once we got BIOS set up, we switch in Titus, Yuna and Riku and start setting up haste and protect on everybody, though I quickly realized that this is pretty much a waste considering Simo will dispel the party before cross cleave anyways. Still, this is not all too bad even without buffs. The only thing we do is defend the enemy's attacks and heal the zombie status before he uses full life. Cross cleave does still quite some damage even with a guard up, but with a few extra cheers, we can reduce the damage to the point where the majority of characters can even survive the following Lance of Atrophy. And yeah, that is pretty much the entire strategy to this boss fight. We occasionally need to revive if we can't heal the zombie status in time, but other than that, this strategy is very safe for the most part. At this point, I got a little greedy though. Since I had an extra turn with Riku coming up, I figured that we can easily get a steal in for some extra items. What I didn't know though is that a steal can also trigger a phase change, and because Simo was already low on HP, he immediately went into his last phase, and needless to say there was no way we can get the last 24,000 HP yet remaining down before he used total annihilation. So yeah, that was totally avoidable. But hey, at least now I know that we don't need to actually damage Simo to trigger the phase change. On attempt number 2, I made sure to steal when he was still in his regular first phase, and then continue on just like before. The battle takes quite a while, but with that strategy there isn't really anything that can happen to the party, and after about 20 minutes, we deal the final blow to Seymour and win the battle. I was hoping that maybe we can overkill him with a lucky crit, but this time we unfortunately didn't get it. After getting some more stats onto our main party, we continue on and equip confusion wards on everybody that has access to them, which is basically only Yuna, before heading into the next boss fight against the Sanctuary Keeper, and this one is going to be quite messy. We start by immediately hasting Yuna, since the boss will always open up the battle with Photon Wings, which can put various status elements onto the party like Curse, Blind, Sleep, and the worst one being Confusion. This is why I am really glad that we just got the Confusion Ward ring for Yuna, since she can heal off everything else with Asuna. Once we recover, we try to get haste and also shell onto everybody. Kimari puts Bio onto the boss, since it's another one that is susceptible to poison. While it can heal itself with Asuna, we can just reapply it again if that happens. Asuna also means that the boss wastes its turn instead of doing something way more dangerous, so I'm not even opposed to that all too much. The shell cast is important as it's literally the only way we can survive the mana breath. Once we get everything set up, we throw out a couple of extra cheers for more attack and then start going for damage. Unfortunately, the boss will cast Photon Wings every once in a while again, and the second time we get unlucky as everybody either gets confused or put to sleep. After Kimari wipes Orin, he kicks out of the confusion thanks to the boss's attack, and we even managed to make a recovery when it looked like this attempt may be dead already. Even during phases where we can't directly damage the boss due to having to recover, the poison will still continue to do damage each turn. Unfortunately, the boss also has a chance to counter physical attacks with Tail Sweep, though luckily this doesn't happen all too often and is usually not a big issue either, as long as we still have turns before its next attack. The boss casting Asuna several times certainly helps when it comes to recovery, though the following Photon Wings almost wipes us yet again. Luckily, Titus manages to pull through, and Riku can get everybody back up, and we manage to recover yet again. Sanctuary Keeper is pretty much down at this point, so one more hit by our protagonist is enough to get the boss down on our first attempt. While this was definitely quite the mess, we still made it, so I can't really complain all too much. We continue on and head into the temple next to complete the last set of the Cloister of Trials before heading into the very next boss fight. And while we cannot poison the Spectral Keeper like a lot of other bosses before him, we still have a very good means to control this battle with Provoke. Spectral Keeper likes to berserk characters and then counter their attacks with a physical attack that hits the 3 spots that are in front of him. We will use that mechanic to our advantage to have Titus take the berserk tail, and then Asuna him before he attacks the boss. To make sure he can take the attacks, we also put Protect on him and then start setting up our other characters. Once everybody is hasted and a couple of cheers are casted, we start attacking the boss. With Titus constantly guarding, the counterattacks are not that big of an issue, especially with Riku healing for 2000 HP with high potions thanks to her alchemy weapon. Even if we don't manage to Asuna Titus before he berserk attacks the boss, it's usually not a problem as he can take a hit without going down, and then we can recover just as usual. When the boss uses Glyph Mine, we need to warp around to make sure characters don't go down. This is probably the most dangerous thing that can happen in the battle, as we sometimes have to move the other characters into the boss's counterattack range. If that happens, we just need to make sure that Titus does not get an attack off before we can heal with Asuna to prevent counterattacks from happening. Once the spots have blown up, we can move our characters back into position and continue on like before. And that is pretty much all there is to that fight. Thanks to Provoke, we can control the enemy pretty well, and once we're all set up, we can attack with Orin and Kimari, while Titus takes the counterattacks from the boss. The occasional berserk hit doesn't matter all too much, and thanks to the buff, the attack hits for some pretty nice numbers on the boss. Overall, this battle is relatively simple, and after about 20 minutes, we're done and the boss goes down. We continue advancing on the sphere grid, though we're starting to run into issues as we're all out of power spheres, so the majority of characters have to wait now, though we do make it to Reflect with Yuna just in time for the next boss fight. Before we head there though, we need to restock items, and because there is no way to buy anything in Samarkand, we travel all the way back to the Calmlands, though luckily with the teleporters, this is not that much of a detour. After stocking up on high potions and Phoenix Downs, we head back into Samarkand and prepare for Yunalesca. We would like to have confusion words on our armor for everybody, but just like with Sanctuary Keeper earlier, Yuna is the only character that actually possesses one. Once we're done with our setup, we head into the fight against Yunalesca. This one consists of 3 phases, though phase 1 is rather tame, so we try to set up pretty much everything here. In phase 1, she will only throw out weak attacks and absorb the character with the highest HP every other turn. Yunalesca will counter all physical attacks in phase 1 with Blind, which is where the Reflect that we just got before this fight comes into play. Additionally, we also need to successfully steal a total of 3 tabs in this battle. Yunalesca possesses stamina tablets, which doubles her character's HP. We need a total of 3 of those for the final boss battle against Braska's final Aeon later on. At first I wanted to steal all 3 in phase 1 of the battle, but Yunalesca also counters all special attacks with Sleep, and I didn't want to put a Reflect on Riku for reasons we will get into later, so I figured we're probably better off doing the steals in phase 2. Once we're done setting all hastes, reflects and cheers up, we can start doing damage with our usual 3 guys party. We also bring in Riku occasionally to heal up with high potions after the absorb, and then continue on until we get to phase 2. This is where it starts to get a little bit more complicated. Yunalesca will start the phase using Hellbiter, which puts zombie on all characters. Since she likes to cast Regen onto them afterwards, we need to get rid of everybody that still has Reflect on so the Regen doesn't bounce back at her. We don't have any means of the spell, so if that happens, there is no way we can get rid of her Regen, so we need to avoid this at all costs. Once everybody's back up again, we also start stealing with Riku to get the 2 remaining stamina tablets. If a character gets Regen on them, we throw a holy water to clear the zombie and have them regenerate HP until she uses Hellbiter the next time. Since Yunalesca only uses Regen and Cura as her quote-unquote attacks during this phase, this is still relatively safe, and once we got all 3 stamina tablets, we bring back our attacking team and continue on doing damage. Characters will go down every once in a while, but thanks to Riku's alchemy, we can fully heal them with a Phoenix Down and then continue on. Putting up buffs for our attacking characters at this point is also useless, since Yunalesca will counter every hit with an attack that also dispels the parties, so we're better off just attacking without any other shenanigans. Towards the end of phase 2, we want to make sure that all characters are on zombie status because she will insta-wipe everybody not inflicted with it with Mega Death as soon as we get into the last phase. Phase 3 is also the most dangerous of them. Yunalesca will still go for the same strategy as in phase 2, but use Curaga instead of Cura now, which is basically a one-shot. The one thing that is far more dangerous though is her new attack Mind Blast, which has a decent chance to confuse the entire party. Luckily her AI pattern for the most part is pretty predictable here, as she will usually go for Hellbite first, then Mega Death followed by 2 turns of healing before going for another Mind Blast. The second Mind Blast shows why it's so important to have Confusion Ward on Yuna, as she's the only character to not get confused here. Thanks to her still having haste, she also gets 2 turns before everybody else, so we can quickly heal the confusion off before worse things happen. Due to having to regularly revive characters, it's not guaranteed that everybody is zombied by the time Megadeath hits, but as long as we have at least one character stay alive through it, we are usually fine as Riku is very fast to bring everybody back up again. As long as we pay attention to where she currently is in her attacking pattern, and make sure that we have Yuna in by the time she hits Mind Blast, we should be fine for the most part. We get lucky on another Mind Blast as Auron goes down and Titus gets a turn in before Yuna can heal him, but luckily she dodges the friendly fire and we can recover again afterwards. Overall, this is everything we have to look out for, and we continue on until we eventually get Yunalesca down and complete one of the most complicated fights in this game on the first try as well. As a reward, we get a zombie-proof shield for Titus, something that can become useful in phase 1 of the final boss fight later on. Since Riku is pretty much at the end of her grid portion, and we're still severely lacking power spheres anyways, I figured now might also be a good time to use our friend spheres to get the extra agility onto our attacking party. We have exactly 6 speed spheres remaining, which is just enough to get all 3 of them a total of +8 agility. The extra agility might be important in order to get enough turns in to beat Sin later on, so we want to make sure to have that on everybody. While an extra 8 agility doesn't sound like much, it almost triples the agility of our attackers compared to before, so overall it should make quite a difference. Once that is done, we use the return spheres to get them back to their initial position and continue on with the game. Since we got access to the airship now, we could theoretically go pretty much everywhere, but considering we're not allowed to do any side quests, we head straight for Pavel, and once Micah gets out of dodge, we are ready to tackle Sin. To start this segment off, we need to beat the 2 Finns first. At the beginning of the battle, we are out of reach, so Sin is not going to do much. We use that to set up haste and cheer onto our attacking party, as well as Yuna and Riku. Once we are ready, we pull in and start going for the damage. We use Armor Break to be able to deal decent damage, and also make sure to extract power to get some more power spheres. Sin at this point can either remain motionless, which is the ideal scenario, or it can ram the airship, which not only deals damage to all party members, but also delays their next turn, which can become quite dangerous if that happens several times. Luckily, Riku's Bad potions that we can now buy on the airship are a huge help for this, and once the Finn charges up for Gravia, we just pull back and try to avoid it. While it's only percentage based damage, it can still become quite dangerous if Sin attacks again afterwards, and we don't have enough turns to recover in time, so while this is probably not 100% necessary, I didn't want to take any unneeded risks. Sin can also use Negation, which dispels all statuses on both the party and the enemy, so we need to reapply haste and armor break if that happens. Other than that, the battle is pretty simple, and the first Finn is down shortly afterwards, so we head into the second Finn battle without a break in between. And battle number 2 is basically identical to the first one. Luckily, we start out of range again, so we can easily heal up the wounds from the previous encounter, and once we're all set up again, we draw in close and start doing damage. Since it is just like the first one, I'm not going to go into details here, though it did get a little hairy once when Sin delayed the party's attacks twice in a row and then went for Gravia, but luckily we were able to recover before its next attack. Towards the end, we also switch Kimari's weapon to Fire Strike for the next battle and then go for the finishing blow. With the 2 Finns gone, we have to beat the Sin spawn on top of Sin next. This one goes for Venom regularly, which is pretty much guaranteed to poison the party member targeted. Luckily, Auron has poison immunity and seems to get targeted regularly, so that makes healing up a little easier. Just like in the Finn battles, we also use extract power to get some more power spheres and then continue on attacking the enemy once we're all set up. Other than Venom, it can also use Thrashing, which deals quite some damage to the entire party and actually gets us into a rather dangerous position. Thanks to Alchemy, Riku can help out very well again and we're able to recover. As long as the core doesn't act, we should be fine, but Agravia followed by Thrashing could be lethal, so we need to watch out still. Once we have done a certain amount of damage, the Sin Spawn starts hiding, at which point it will use Sight to blind the entire party. Not only that, but each attack is countered by Kyura, and Kimari with his fire attack is the only party member strong enough to outdamage the auto counter heal. Eventually, I didn't pay enough attention to the turn order, and we got the Gravia, followed by Psy right afterwards, and this gave us the next game over. Luckily, the autosave is of great use here as it triggers right before the Sin Spawn battle, so at least we don't have to redo the Finn fights again. The Gravia Psy combination is a guaranteed wipe, so as soon as the core starts gathering energy, we absolutely have to make sure to get a character between the two enemy turns to properly heal up and survive the following Psy. Due to the constant blind from the attack, and Kimari also being the only one to actually damage the Sin Spawn, it takes quite a while before we're able to take it down, but we get lucky and manage to land another crit to overkill the enemy before advancing to the core. At this point, we can't lose anymore as long as we pay proper attention. The core itself only uses Gravia, which is percentage based, and while it has a chance to counterattack with AoE magic, the pattern is fixed so we can once again use Yuna's null elemental abilities to make sure we null the counter damage. Just like with the Sin Spawn, we also use extract power on the core for one more power sphere and then continue doing damage. The counterattacks are easily nulled, and a few turns later, we manage to get lucky yet again as we land another critical for an overkill. The experience we get from the overkills isn't even the important part, but since overkills also double our item drops, we get 4 more power spheres which are going to be incredibly useful. Not only that, we also get a slow strike weapon for Titus which could come in very handy for the final boss fight later on. Before we get there though, we still have to fight Big Sin as well, and this is probably the battle I'm most afraid of. Because of this, we pump the last bits of HP and strength into our main attackers and stack up on items at range shop. We also equip stoneproof armor on everybody that has access to one and then head into the next boss fight. Unlike all other battles, we are on a very strict timer here as we need to deal a total of 140,000 damage in time before we get auto-wiped. Sin is out of range for the first 2 turns, so we use that to get haste on everybody and start buffing ourselves with cheer on both Titus and Kimari. Once Sin is in range, we start with the assault. Sin will counterattack after it has been hit 6 times, and this counter is exactly where we need some good luck, since it can inflict confusion, petrify and zombie. Luckily zombie in this scenario doesn't matter, and while Kimari and Oren at least are immune against petrify, Titus can be inflicted with all ailments. The first counter immediately petrifies Titus, and I think this attempt may already be over. We need to reapply haste and lose way too many turns this way. The second and third counter inflict zombie, which is fine, but the last one also puts confusion on Oren, who proceeds to wipe Kimari, so if the attempt wasn't dead until then, it certainly is now, and we get wiped by Giga Graviton on the following turn. On attempt number 2, the first counter immediately confuses both Titus and Kimari, who then wipe Oren, so yeah, this is not going to work out either. There really is nothing we can do about this, we just have to hope to get lucky with counterattacks, so we reload and head right back in. On attempt number 3, we finally get lucky enough where nothing dangerous happens on the first or second counter, so this is looking much more promising now. Again, no confusion or petrify on the third counter, and the fourth one either, so if this one doesn't work out, we're heavily screwed. We throw everything we have at the boss, and with the very last attack before getting insta-wiped again, we are able to take Sin down. As simple as this battle is, that was pretty intense. If we wouldn't have had enough DPS, we would have had to rely on additional lucky criticals, so I'm really glad we made it without them. Within Sin, we grab the Phantom Ring for Yuna, which is an extremely important armor as it absorbs lightning, fire and water. We also make what are probably some of our last moves on the sphere grid, where we are especially trying to get Auron's max HP up as high as possible. Seymour's Ultima is going to hit very hard, so I expect that Auron is the only one who has a chance to survive it, but we will see for ourselves in just a minute, as we are now ready to approach the final Seymour battle. We start the battle by hasting Yuna so she gets a turn before Seymour, because once again, her null spells are absolutely mandatory in here. Seymour attacks 4 times each turn, so we can null 3 of those, and then have to hope that the last attack either targets Yuna, who absorbs fire, or Kimahri, who halves its damage. Even Tidus can take a full hit, we just have to heal him up again before the next attack to make sure that he doesn't get wiped. Other than that, we do the usual setup where we haste everybody and then set up cheers to buff our attack. We also bring in Auron and Rikku to haste them before switching them out again, since the haste will be necessary to get the required amount of turns in once we have to recover. Shell unfortunately is relatively useless in this battle, as the elemental spells are nulled for the most part anyways, and Ultima ignores Shell entirely. Once we're finished buffing up, we switch to elemental weapons that can hit a weakness if we have the correct ones, and then start attacking the boss, and as you can see, we're actually doing a good amount of damage here. As soon as his wheels start to light up, he will prepare for the big attack. First, Seymour will dispel the party before going for Ultima. We switch out Yuna for Auron, get some more damage in, and then hope to withstand the attack, and as expected, Tidus and Kimahri both go down, though Auron is able to take the hit with less than 200 HP remaining. So if we had 1 HP node less, we would have gotten wiped here. After this, we immediately bring in Rikku to start reviving everybody, and here I made a mistake. Rikku would get 2 turns in before the boss, but I wasn't sure if Seymour was going for another attack or not, so I only revived Kimahri and then switched back to Yuna. Seemingly though, Seymour will always switch wheels after using Ultima, so we could have easily brought back Tidus as well. To add to this, on the following turn I accidentally selected the wrong null spell as we went for Null Tide instead of Null Frost, and needless to say, Seymour proceeded to wipe the floor of the party, giving us another game over. And I can't even blame the game for this one, this was just bad play on my part, so we head straight back into battle for attempt number 2. We're not going to talk about the entire battle again, so we skip forward to the point where Seymour throws out the first Ultima. This time we bring back everybody, Seymour switches reels again, and we go for the correct null spell this time. Bliss Saga is quite a bit more dangerous though, as it's the only element that Yuna's armor does not absorb, so if she gets hit with the 4th attack, she gets one shot. And even though Rikku can bring her back quickly, it's usually not enough for her to get another turn in before Seymour's next attack. I was hoping that we got him low enough to charge up another Ultima, but unfortunately it was not enough yet, and while Tidus had enough HP to take the hit, Yuna went down again. To my surprise though, Seymour only attacked 3 times instead of the usual 4 here. Looking at his AI, it seems that his 4th random attack can also target a dead party member, and if that happens, he just skips out on the final attack, so I guess we got pretty lucky here. We bring in Rikku to revive Yuna, and even though she once again doesn't get a turn in before Seymour's next attack, this time he does charge up for another Ultima. Just like before, we bring in Auron and throw an X potion to take the hit, and have Rikku revive everybody right after again. This time Seymour rolls water, and with that we should be good again, as nobody should go down from his 4th randomly rolled attack. We throw another haste on Yuna so she can keep up with his attacks, and then throw out some more damage. Luckily Seymour is almost down at this point, and a few more attacks are all it takes to end the battle and open up the way to the final boss fight. Also watching this cutscene, did anybody else ever wonder why Auron is absolutely not phased by the sending here, even though he's just as unsent as Seymour is? He struggled to stay in Spira when they sent Chiskel and Guado Solam, yet he doesn't even bat an eye here. Weird. Anyways, we are ready to approach the final boss battle. We return to the airship to stock up on items one more time, and then head back into Sin. We want to make sure to have either a stone-proof or zombie-proof armor equipped on everybody that has access to one. We also make our last sphere grid advancements, as we use the special sphere to teach Orin Sentinel, as well as the white magic sphere to teach Riku haste, and then head for the final area. During the egg collection, or whatever those things are called, we get some more good rewards though, as we're able to grab another skill sphere, a white magic sphere, and an attribute sphere. The white magic sphere especially is important, as we can teach Riku Protect, and with that we basically eliminated the need for Yuna in the final boss battle. Riku is a better healer and has access to both haste and protect now, so we're going to use her over Yuna. The attribute sphere is nice too, since we can get Riku 300 more max HP this way to get her a bit more bulky. We also use the skill sphere to teach her zombie attack. Since Checked has 50% zombie resistance and we got no weapon with Zombie Strike on Titus, the status is not guaranteed to hit, so having a second character that can potentially apply it is going to be a huge help. We also use the last 3 magic spheres to get Riku's and Titus's max HP both increased by 40, and with that, we should be all set up for the battle against Braska's final Aeon. The first tricky part of the battle is trying to get set up. Our party is going to consist of Orin, who uses Sentinel at first to draw attacks in and help getting set up, with the other party members being Titus and Riku. First of all, we want to throw the stamina tablets to double everybody's max HP and heal up quickly so we can take a couple of hits. Once that is done, we're going to try and get everybody hasted, as well as protected, and then throw out a couple of cheers to get both our attack and defense further up. Unfortunately, Orin cannot draw in all attacks, so it's important for Riku to get 2 turns before BFA to both throw the stamina tablet and also heal up, since the effect of it will be gone if a character goes down. And yeah, we get a rather unlucky setup on attempt number 1, and BFA wipes both Riku and Orin before we can get set up properly, so this was a short attempt. Luckily, there is an autosave right before the boss, so we only need to redo the sphere grid setups from the spheres we have gotten during the egg collection, and then head right back into the boss fight. While we set up during attempt number 2, let's also take a quick look at BFA's attacks in phase 1. He can use Checked Beam, which is a single target attack that also petrifies a character, so ideally he targets one of our immune party members with it. His other attack is a single target hit which delays the party member targeted with it, so this is not ideal either. Last but not least, we also got his Overdrive Triumphant Grasp, which deals roughly 3000 damage after setting up, and also inflicts the character with zombies, so this is the reason why we have zombie protection on the party members that have access to it, which in our scenario is only Titus. Now onto the actual damaging portion of the fight. The U-Pagodas will heal Checked for 3000 HP every time their turns come up, but luckily they can be slowed, so we switch to Titus' slow strike weapon we got from Sin earlier, only to realize that the Pagodas are ranged and cannot be hit with Titus. Since he's the only character with access to slow though, this means that we cannot get the status on at all. This drastically increases the difficulty and especially duration of the battle, as they will heal BFA much more often than anticipated at first. While this is a problem, we still have Zombie Strike on 2 characters, which should hopefully neutralize the heals somewhat. Not only that, but with Zombie and BFA, we can throw healing items at him for extra damage. Unfortunately, he is immune to Phoenix Downs or X potions, but we can chuck Mega Potions at him which deal 4000 damage when thrown with Riku thanks to the alchemy. Those will be mostly saved for phase 2 though, as it is much more dangerous, and we also want to keep a few of them for their intended use on the party. Overall, progression is still rather slow though, since Zombie only hits 50% of the time, so it's not guaranteed that we can outdamage the healing. Putting Zombie Strike on Riku was also probably not the best choice either, as she's usually occupied with healing and doesn't get that many opportunities to get a hit on BFA. As the fight progresses, I am also not sure if Orin was the correct choice as third party member. My initial thought process was that he's the most bulky within the party, so he should easily be able to tank even the bigger hits in phase 2. Overall, he is rather slow though, and except Sentinel and his high HP, he doesn't really offer anything particularly useful. Still, I wanted to see how far I can get in the battle. Since we're very slow when it comes to getting damage in, we skip forward a little to the point where we push BFA into the second phase. Phase 1 already took about 35 minutes in this setup, and Phase 2 is probably going to be even worse. Check's Overdrive will stay the same for now, but Triumphant Grasp in Phase 2 deals more damage compared to Phase 1, as we now take a bit more than 4000 damage compared to the 3000 from earlier. As a trade-off, it doesn't inflict zombie any longer, so we only have to watch out for the Petrify from the check shot. The delayed single target attack from Phase 1 has also been enhanced by an extra AoE version with the sword swipe, and this may just be the worst thing about the entire fight for several reasons. If he uses the swipe first and then gets his overdrive filled, he's absolutely not allowed to target Riku, since even on full HP there is a good chance that she's not able to take the incoming damage. This is not the only problem though. Due to the delayed attack, the pagodas usually get an extra turn in as well, so if we don't get the zombie status to stick, they can heal BFA for up to 6000 HP with the party not getting a single turn in between. Luckily this doesn't happen all too often, as there is only a 25% chance that 2 zombie strikes in a row don't connect with the element, but it is definitely something to consider, especially since Riku oftentimes is occupied with healing and can't even attack the boss. After about 25 minutes of battling Phase 2, Titus got wiped due to a double swipe because we weren't able to get Protect back up on everybody again after back-to-back check shots earlier, and there goes another attempt. At this point, Check also still had about 90,000 of his 120,000 HP remaining, so we also didn't really make a lot of progress. So like mentioned earlier, we will make some adjustments to our team now. Instead of Oren, we will go with Kimahri going forward and teach him zombie attack. Kimahri has one more agility than Oren, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it will add up over the course of the battle. He's also a bit stronger, but has lower max HP, but I don't think this should matter for the most part. This means that Riku is also freed up and can focus on healing and getting buffs back up again. Therefore, we will only give her 1 plus 20 MP and give the last mana sphere to Kimahri for another plus 40 MP. Just like Oren, Kimahri also has armor with stoneproof, so we don't have to be afraid of him getting petrified either. With those changes, we head back in and give the battle another shot. One thing I quickly noticed is that due to the missing sentinel, the initial setup becomes quite a bit more dangerous. While we couldn't draw in check shot or the overdrive attack, Sentinel was still quite helpful in order to set up without anybody going down prematurely. Case in point where Riku gets wiped by an overdrive due to not being fully healed up even after using the stamina tablet. Once we got everybody's HP doubled and healed up though, Phase 1 becomes quite a bit more manageable. Kimahri not only has access to Zombie Strike, but also has haste, so he can function as a decent support as well when it comes to getting buffs back up. This takes some more load off of Riku, as she can either focus on healing or putting Protect back up again. Kimahri is also a huge help in getting damage onto the boss. Not only does he hit harder than Oren, but with him being able to attack more often than Riku, the chance to get the zombie status to stick is also much higher. This time, we make it to Phase 2 after only about 20-ish minutes, so we're about 35% faster with Kimahri compared to Oren. By the looks of it, it seems we have made the right choice. Unfortunately, we're still somewhat at the mercy of the RNG gods, as a sword swipe into Triumphant Grasp on Riku can still easily kill the attempt. Overall, we're making much more progress compared to before still. Due to Kimahri helping out Titus with Zombie Strike, this means that Riku can throw Mega Potions for extra damage occasionally when she has a free turn coming up. In an ideal scenario, we can sometimes deal between 10 and 12,000 damage between the pagoda turns, which means that even if we get the occasional back-to-back healing turns, we're doing more damage on average than the pagodas can heal back. Eventually the dreaded combination happened though. We get a sword swipe with a following Triumphant Grasp on Riku, and there goes another attempt. Nothing we could have done about that, just bad luck overall. This setup seems to work much better than the first one though, so I am confident that we can win with this. We got wiped a couple of more times during setting up in Phase 1, but once we're all ready to go, the phase itself becomes rather safe for the most part, and since it's the same thing all the time, let's just skip right back to Phase 2. The strategy is still the same as before. Make sure to have everybody hasted and protected constantly, and heal with Riku, while Titus and Kimari try to get Zombie to stick with an additional Mega Potion from Riku if she gets the opportunity for an extra turn to use. Sword Swipe is still as annoying as ever, and Check Shot ideally hits Kimari since he's the only party member with Petrify immunity, but we hang in pretty well for the most part. For the first time, we managed to get Phase 2 BFA to below half HP, at which point he will unlock a new Overdrive, the ultimate Check Shot. And this is the last thing I'm really afraid of. This is a pretty strong AoE attack, but I expect that it shouldn't do more than 4000 damage, so everybody should still be able to tank the hit. The one thing I am way more afraid of is the combination of Sword Swipe into Overdrive, as that would guarantee a wipe on Riku. To my surprise though, Ultimate Check Shot only does about 3500 damage to the entire party, and this is a huge relief. While it could be close, it looks like Riku could even live through the Sword Swipe into Overdrive combination as long as her HP are full, and we don't have to wait very long, as this is a very common combination used by the boss, and would you look at that, Riku lived through both attacks with about 300 HP remaining. This basically means that the only combination that could still be lethal is a double swipe into Overdrive, which hopefully doesn't have a very high chance to happen. In fact, with Ultimate Check Shot only doing around 3500 damage, this Overdrive might actually be safer compared to Triumphant Grasp, which dealt 4000 and was guaranteed to wipe Riku if BFA used a Sword Swipe before. Since we still need a Mega Potion after each Overdrive though, we need to be careful to not throw too many of them at the boss when this zombied. Overall, this seems to be rather safe though now, and after battling the boss for about 1.5 hours, we're able to deal the final blow and beat Braska's final Aeon, and therefore the challenge. And while it is not officially over yet, we're done with the hardest battle, as from now on the entire party is on permanent auto life, so nothing bad can happen any longer. The Aeon battles can be a little annoying, as some of them have a high chance to dodge the party's attacks, but this is nothing that's too bad. Yu Yevon is free as always, as we just connect with Zombie Attack, and then throw a Phoenix down to complete the last battle of this run and officially beat the challenge. And that is it, everybody. We beat Final Fantasy X doing only mandatory battles and quests, while also banning summons, overdrives, customization and refighting bosses. And I do have to say that this run was a lot more fun than I first expected it to be. There are so many challenge runs that involve some kind of no sphere grid that people often like to forget how broken Riku's item use actually is when you can grind them on random encounters. This challenge, however, was a very nice combination of difficulty and creativity, especially when it comes to optimally use the very limited amount of spheres you get throughout the run. The no refighting bosses rule prevented us from just grinding the equipment that would make things much easier, though admittedly, we did still get some pretty good luck on some of the boss drops throughout the run. Overall, I can highly recommend this challenge for everybody that wants to do something different with FF10 other than the classic challenges. I want to eventually give the NSG, NS, NC, NONE, NNE, MBB or whatever it's called challenge a try as well, but that may be something I will do on the side next to other projects, as this is something that can easily take up months or even years. With all that being said, special thanks go out to this video's top channel supporters Novarel, Shurker, Matthew Freg and Cody Pressler, as well as all other channel members and patrons. Becoming a channel member or joining the Patreon gives you 48-hour early access to all videos, among other small perks, so if you want to support the channel even more, there are plenty of ways to do so. That is all for me today, thanks for watching and I hope you enjoyed the run as much as I did. Until next time, take care.